I think that our campaign has been out here a lot.
Dionne Foster, a policy advisor and community organization leader, beat out incumbent City Council President Sara Nelson by more than 23 points in the August primary, with a message of helping working families and taxing the wealthy.
Voters here have really been clear that they want somebody who is going to hold their progressive values.
Let's get them on board.
Nelson wants to hold on to her position 9 citywide seat. And after some success in restoring police staffing, now wants to focus on solving street disorder.
I am putting addiction treatment at the center of the city's agenda.
Foster says Nelson's legislation to build housing in the Stadium District could hurt port workers and pedestrians.
And for that reason, I did not support that proposal.
Nelson disagrees.
That was a no-brainer for me because we're in the midst of a housing affordability crisis.
And that's not the only issue where they're clashing.
Now is not the time for a learning curve.
We're in a really dicey moment as a country right now.
Dionne Foster, Sara Nelson, and the fight for citywide position 9. Next on City Inside Out. Welcome to City Inside Out. I'm your host, Brian Callanan. One of the most closely watched city council races in Seattle this fall is between Council President Sara Nelson and her challenger, Dionne Foster. Foster beat Nelson in the primary by more than 23 points, one of many signs this year that voters may want to change from what's currently a more moderate-leaning city government. Foster, a former policy advisor for the city and progressive advocacy organization leader, says she's the right fit for citywide position 9. But Nelson says she's delivered on promises like hiring more police and building more affordable housing, and she's ready for a fight to the finish.
There's definitely a present fear of the federal government.
Trump has fundamentally changed Seattle's political dynamic.
City Council position 9 candidates Dionne Foster and Sara Nelson are both aware national politics are affecting Seattle politics this November.
Hello.
Progressive candidates like Foster, the former CEO of the Progressive Alliance of Washington, made a strong showing message of pushing back against federal cuts to the city's budget with taxes on the wealthy.
And I think voters here have really been clear that they want somebody who is going to hold their progressive values and is going to work on unifying our city.
Let's get them on board.
Nelson, the incumbent, says her years at City Hall make her the better choice to handle federal government concerns. Elected to her citywide seat in 2021, she became council president after a majority moderate council came into power.
Who do you want fighting for you? Someone with experience, someone who's not afraid of taking on tough fights and winning them.
One of those fights was with the Port of Seattle this year, which strongly opposed Nelson's legislation for housing in the Stadium District.
That was a no-brainer for me because we're in the midst of a housing affordability crisis, but I took on some entrenched interest to get that across the finish line.
Foster disagrees with Nelson's proposal and wants to focus affordable housing efforts elsewhere.
There are many, many, many places in the city where we can build housing, where people have, where you're not going to necessarily run into issues with pedestrians and freight.
Foster won 58.4% of the primary vote and is endorsed by the stranger. Her top priorities include having a diversity of public safety responses, strong public services, and zoning reforms to expand housing options.
When I am out talking to people, it's so clear that my vision for housing abundance, for investments in affordability, that those really resonate with people.
Sara Nelson won 35.3% of the vote and is endorsed by the Seattle Times. She supports community programs like the CD Panthers football and cheer teams, addiction treatment, and restoring Seattle police staffing.
We've reversed the trend of losing more officers than we can hire, and we're on our way to really filling in those important gaps to keep the city safe.
It's a progressive political newcomer up against the city council president in the race for position 9. And we are glad to have both candidates for the Seattle City Council's position 9 citywide seat with us. We have with us Council President Sara Nelson. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
We also have with us Dionne Foster. Glad you could make it as well.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thank you.
Let's get into it. We had a coin flip before the show. Dionne, you will be speaking first. An opening statement, if you could, about why you're running, your qualifications. Please keep it to a minute.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm running for city council because I love this city and I want to fight to make sure it is an incredible place. I'm a mom and I'm raising my 12-year-old son here, and I want this to be a place where he can afford to grow up and stay if he so chooses. I want this to be a place where he can feel safe walking across the street to catch the bus. We live close to Rainier Avenue, where there's a lot of traffic accidents and traffic violence, and I want the bus ride to be safe, and I want him to be able to grow up here and thrive. I have spent my career working on improving people's lives. That most recently was as executive director as Washington Progress Alliance, where we invested in everything from affordable housing organizing to passing the statewide capital gains tax. I've also served locally. I was a policy advisor for the city of Seattle, for the Seattle Public Utilities, and I also worked at Seattle Foundation, helping to invest in organizations all around our region, doing everything from youth services to homeless and housing. So I'm excited to run for city council to bring that experience and fight for the future that we all deserve.
Thank you very much for that. Council President Nelson, an opening statement, a minute, please.
My name is Sara Nelson, and I'm running for re-election because I, too, love this city. I've lived here for 35 years, lifelong Democrat, wife, mother, and I care about the future of this city and also the people that are living right here and have been really struggling with some serious issues. And I am running to make progress that on some of the most key issues, such as increasing affordable housing, making our cities and our streets and our parks safe for children, for families to walk around and feel safe. And then most of all, recognize that in 4 years, we've made a lot of good progress, but there is still a long way to go. And I am not afraid of saying that we need to push harder for that progress. And that's what it's going to take going forward, especially now that we've got an external threat, Donald Trump, that is threatening some of our most vulnerable communities, our housing dollars, our healthcare dollars. And so we have got to be focused on internal issues and also what could be coming down from the federal government.
Thanks, and we will break apart that federal issue in just a little bit, but I wanted to talk about a local policy issue with you, drug and crisis treatment. You've made this a top priority for your campaign. Tell us why this is important to you, some of the work you've been doing already on this score, and the work you want to continue doing and build on if you're reelected.
Thank you for that question. And sometimes I feel like people want me to talk about my personal story, which is, in fact, that I am in recovery. I checked myself into rehab during COVID for alcohol abuse. But you don't have to be in recovery to realize that addiction is fueling our public safety and our chronic homelessness problems. And so to me, we have to look at the root causes. And that is why I've been focused on expanding access to on-demand addiction treatment, in addition to stabilizing the existing services that we have for medication for opioid use disorder. But the fact is that the city needs a coherent plan for dealing with this root cause of so many of the things that are making our people suffer. And so I'm trying to develop that comprehensive plan and go forward because it's so important for the future of our city and for the lives of our people.
Thank you for that. Dionne, I think you might agree with a lot of these treatment ideas, but I know there are some methods the council has been using to deal with public drug use, especially, that are a concern for you. I wanted to talk about SODA, the Stay Out of Drug Area law the council passed last fall. This allows judges to grant orders preventing people accused of drug crimes from entering certain parts of the city. There's a SOAP law, too, of course, Stay Out of Areas of Prostitution. You have a different stance than Council President Nelson when it comes to these stay out of drug areas. I want to talk about that and maybe what you would do differently when it comes to public drug use and street disorder if you're elected.
Yeah, absolutely. And first, let me speak to the treatment component because I want to say it's incredibly important and it has to be a part of our network of care, right? I myself, when I was out campaigning, witnessed somebody who was suffering an overdose and needed to call 911, get a response. We found Narcan and helped support this person and keep them alive. And that is happening all around our city, and it just shouldn't be the experience that anyone is having. And so I think it's really important that we are making significant investments in treatment. I also want to be clear that I would not have supported SODA, as you brought up, and in part of that is because what that's designed to do is it's essentially a banishment zone, right? So it says this is a part of our city where you are no longer allowed to be, but what it does not do is create a warm handoff. What it does not do is create space or capacity in our system. And so those are the things that I think we need to be leading with and working on first. And to me, that was an incredibly missed opportunity.
Okay. You had a rejoinder to that, please.
Yeah, so I did vote for the soda and soap laws because I think that we do need to interrupt the markets where opportunists are preying on the people on the streets, whether that be people downtown buying and using drugs, or the people up on Aurora that are being exploited in sexual exploitation practices. But here's the thing: those public safety tools are needed because of a failure of the city and the county to do more on treatment. So I see the two very different. One is providing more services for people in need who desperately need help, and the other is a law enforcement mechanism to actually try to interrupt what's happening on our streets, you know, that are sustaining that victimization and that predatory behavior.
Okay. Maybe a quick response to that, please.
Yeah, you know, I was out recently. I was talking to somebody who lives near the soap zone, actually, and I said, has this made a difference in what you're seeing and what you're experiencing? And he looked me directly in the eye and said, absolutely not. And I think before council passed this legislation, which took a substantial amount of time on the council calendar, there was a lot of evidence because we had this policy in the past, and the city moved away from it, in part because it was ineffective, and in part because there was data that sort of showed that it was unfairly implemented. And so the city moved away from it, and we knew that it was ineffective. Folks testified that it was going to be ineffective. So my belief is that rather than going backwards and passing a policy that we already knew didn't work, the council would have been better spent with that time looking at options that do expand our treatment system.
Okay, thank you. I would like to move on briefly, if you could.
Right, and I would simply say that I have not heard any concrete plans from my opponent for what she will do to improve or increase treatment options.
All right, I guess I'll send it back to you briefly on that, please.
That's a great place to go. So
Yeah.
one of the things that I think is really important in particular is as adding additional capacity to our LEAD program. Our LEAD program is our law enforcement assisted diversion, which is an incredibly important part of our network. And that's one of the ways that we can actually make sure people are getting connected to services. There's peer-to-peer counseling through co-lead and many other things. I've sat in on some of the calls where people are, where you have different agencies between the county, the city, social service providers, and they're looking at a list of people who are eligible for LEAD, and they're having to make incredibly difficult choices because there is not enough capacity in our system to serve the people who are being referred to them. So for me, a top priority would be moving more resources into that system.
Okay, thank you for that.
Which is exactly what my treatment plan investment does. I have a list of about 9 items, and stabilizing LEAD and DESC and Evergreen Treatment Services is front and center of that, because we cannot jeopardize what is working.
Okay.
At the expense of bringing on new things. We have to do both.
Great discussion. I do want to cover some more ground here. Let me talk to you, Council President Nelson, with regard to the housing work that you've done in the Stadium District in SoDo, bringing in housing there. I know there was some pushback from the Port of Seattle about this. You had some concerns about affordable housing that really trumped everything there. Can you talk about this and what you did there in SoDo?
Sure. We have an affordable housing crisis, and so we have to do everything we possibly can to increase affordable housing stock. And in this particular case, we were talking about workforce housing, that the underlying land was zoned for affordable housing, and then it was pulled out of a plan at the last minute. So what I did was fought entrenched business interests, ruffled some feathers to make sure that we have that resource downtown in the Stadium District, which is a downtown neighborhood where it makes perfect sense. That housing will be, by law, it will serve people making between 60% and 90% of AMI. That is a gap that we have in all of our affordable housing resources, and that housing will be built by 100% union labor. And so it is absolutely necessary to use everything that we possibly can to increase housing stock in a housing affordability crisis. And the neighborhoods around the Stadium District were clamoring for it because it would improve public safety by having more people on the street in what is right now an underutilized area.
Got it. You had a different point of view on this, Dionne.
I do, yeah. So that area that my opponent just called underutilized is actually industrial lands, which is incredibly important for our city, for our working waterfront, for good union family wage jobs that people rely on every day to feed their families and be able to stay in the city. Affordable housing is incredibly important to me. It is the reason that I was able to stay in this city. I only own my home because I got access to down payment assistance. I am a huge champion and proponent for investments in affordable housing, which is one of the reasons that I supported Prop 1A for social housing, which would have also, which will provide 100% union-built jobs on social housing projects. My opponent was not supportive of Prop 1A, but instead favored Prop 1B, which would have undermined the process of getting that developer online. I also want to be clear when it comes to looking at housing and industrial lands. The city also received a letter from, I want to say it was 17 bipartisan state legislators who talked about how important it is to preserve those industrial lands. Also from farms and producers all around the state who talked about the fact that, the Port of Seattle is not just the Port of Seattle, right? It's a port for our region that our region relies on to make sure that we have access to the goods that we need. And that at this moment, particularly when we're looking at the Trump administration and tariffs that are coming and that are already hurting businesses, that this was going to add an additional threat, right? So I looked at all of those things when I was sort of looking at this plan, and I think that's really important. The other thing I want to say is we still have tremendous opportunity with our comprehensive plan to add lots more capacity into our housing system, and that's what we should be doing, and that's where we should be focused.
Thank you. I'd like to move on, if I could, just to cover some more ground
Okay.
here. There's so much to cover here. I do want to make sure I talk about endorsements. You won the primary here, Dionne. Can you talk about the top 3 endorsements that you have with your campaign and what that means to you, what you think that should mean to voters?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm incredibly proud to have the sole endorsement of MLK Labor, which is the labor union that represents hundreds of thousands of workers in our region. I'm really proud of that support. I would also uplift the endorsement of Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal, who has been standing up to the Trump administration at the federal level, left and right, and showing the leadership that we all deserve. And then I would look locally to the endorsement of King County Prosecutor Lisa Mannion, who I look forward to partnering with to make sure that we have strong coordination between the city and the county on public safety.
Got it. If you wouldn't mind, Council President Nelson, your top 3 endorsements and what you think voters should draw from that.
Gosh, I'm not going to name particular names because that will get me in a whole mess of trouble.
Oh, I see.
But what
Okay.
I will say is that the building trades unions who have built this city, I am extremely proud of that endorsement because it shows an alignment on the need for both a strong economy so that those projects can get built, and also the need for public safety because a lot of those workers, when they're on the street, they are dealing with the same kind of public safety challenges that the residents and workers in Seattle are facing. So that's an affirmation of a lot of the policy things that I'm trying to do. Good. Also, Seattle firefighters, they are the ones that are going into not just burning buildings, but also responding to medical emergencies in elderly people's homes and also in encampments on the street. So they see what is happening every day in our city, and when they endorse me, they see me as a champion for change on so many of those policy issues that have led to the situations that they're running into every day.
Thank you. I'm going to keep working on public safety with you if I could here. Your campaign has really touted the work you've done over the past 3+ years to restore staffing at the Seattle Police Department. The council actually just passed a measure to add more surveillance cameras as well to cut back on gun violence and car thefts. That's the idea there. A lot's been going on. I wanted to talk about your approach to public safety over your term, your plans for the future, please.
Yes, when think back to 2021, officers were leaving the city in droves. 911 response times were through the roof. People were dying of overdose on our streets, and it was clear that it was essential to build back up SPD staffing levels. So I did a couple of things. I instituted hiring bonuses so that Seattle would be more competitive against other jurisdictions right around us who also were trying to build back their forces. And I threw another staffer in the group that processes SPD applications to streamline that so that people felt that they had support going through that process. Bottom line is that now we have reversed the trend of losing more officers than we can hire, and hiring is at an all-time unprecedented level. What matters even more is that with that influx of applications, we are in a better position to choose the best candidates. Okay. And so that matters for ensuring that the people that are hitting our streets share the values of the people of Seattle.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to get your take on this, Dionne, maybe how you might have a different approach to public safety, and I would love to try to tack on this idea of surveillance cameras too, because I think that's a point of difference between you two, wherever you want to start there.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I think it's incredibly important to make sure that we have a fully staffed SPD. I've had my personal vehicle stolen and recovered by SPD, and I was very grateful for the work and the leadership from that department. And I think we need to continue to make progress on public safety through staffing, but also through community safety. You know, when I'm out talking to folks, I hear a lot about the need to make sure that we have more street and space activation, that we have more work to make sure that we are filling empty storefronts, to make sure that we have investments in community organizations. And I particularly hear a lot about the need to make sure we are investing in places for our young people to go so that they have engagement, so that they have mentorship. And I think that has to be a comprehensive approach to make sure that we are getting not just to being able to solve crime, but to be able to prevent it from happening in the first place. And you know, to go over to surveillance,
please.
I do want to be clear. I was clear that, you know, when I'm looking at the two ordinances that council took up around surveillance, expanding access to CCTVs and also to the traffic cameras.
Yes.
You know, we are in a really dicey moment as a country right now. The day after council passed that legislation, we saw the federal government actually make a request to the Washington State Department of Licensing to ask for the customer data. And it's really important that we are taking seriously the public's concerns around privacy and being measured in our balance with privacy and safety and protecting our residents from the Trump administration.
So do you support the expansion of those cameras?
I do not.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that. I want to make sure I touch on that surveillance camera issue because this is a big decision for the council. Some thoughts about that and maybe about what Dionne's been saying.
Sure. Let me start with that first, because I want to make very clear that I know and believe that public safety is not just about hiring more cops. It is about going after the root causes that are driving our public safety problems, and I've already spoken about addiction, but we also have to look at what will make communities safer. And that is why I paid for the budgets of the CD Panthers, because that's a Central District youth football and cheer squad, and that brings community together. That is violence prevention in action, because people are together, meeting each other, and really building community from the ground up. So I agree wholeheartedly that is part of our public safety response, and I've been working with many organizations to do the same thing.
And the surveillance camera piece, please.
The surveillance camera is one more piece in our toolbox to keep people alive, frankly. If you listen to that conversation, I heard Councilmember Saka, Joy Hollingsworth, Mark Solomon, Deborah Juarez, and
a number of your colleagues, yes. Mm-hmm.
And Maritza Rivera, who share something in common. They share an experience, a closer experience than I have, directly with people, communities that are most impacted by violence, by safety. And when they are calling for more tools in the toolbox, that is something that I think that we need to listen to, because if we don't do this, then we're just saying, okay, we're going to not avail ourselves of the technology that so many cities across the country are using. Blue cities across the country are trying to expand their ability to fight really violent crime, and these cameras are not continuously monitored.
Okay.
They come into the real-time crime center, and they are triggered when there is an emergency that is happening.
Okay. There was a piece you wanted to bring up about this briefly, please.
Yeah, I do think it's important to not flatten the issue, and there's a number of groups that also spoke out very loudly against this surveillance expansion. That included a number of groups who do work very closely with directly impacted communities and represent those communities. So That was the Community Police Commission, our own Community Police Commission here in Seattle. That was One America Votes, which is the state's largest immigrant rights organization. That was the ACLU. And there were also 2 council members who voted no on that, who also have experiences being close to communities who are impacted by violence. So I don't think that we should just gloss over that in this conversation. It's an important thing to bring to the forefront. And, you know, I myself, I've mentioned my own experiences. So I think it is possible for many people to have those experiences of being directly impacted or being very close to communities who are directly impacted and still making a decision to believe that this expansion of surveillance is not the right thing for our city at this time. I also want to just point out that, you know, the previous program was intended to be a pilot program, right? And so part of this is about looking at how is that pilot program working? What information do we learn back from it? And the city did not get that information before moving forward with this expansion.
Got it. Let me keep going down this path.
Just one.
Okay.
We also didn't get the evaluation of how our new care department is doing, but there was widespread support for expanding that program
That
before.
911 alternative, yes.
Right, and so sometimes we have to look at what is working and then decide to jumpstart its permanent viability.
Thank you.
But I will.
Go ahead.
I took an oath to protect the health, safety, and well-being of the people of Seattle.
Okay.
And that means doing everything possible to ensure that. And this technology is not experimental. It's used across the country, and it would have been irresponsible for me to not explore and support helping people in their communities, not be afraid that their loved one could be the next victim of gun violence.
A brief rejoinder, please.
I'll just say, mentioning the care team expansion and the support for that, there were 100 people who showed up and testified in City Hall against the surveillance expansion, right? So when we're balancing expanding a pilot and taking into consideration public information, we just have to be clear that there was a very loud and clear voice against this expansion, and that, again, taking into consideration that there are many people who are going to be fearing for their loved one's safety should that data be either accessed unknowingly without our permission or be later subpoenaed. There's a real need to balance providing safety at the local level and being in context of the moment that we are in that is truly unprecedented.
Thank you. We need to wrap up.
And
Great discussion here.
Chief Barnes's letter does outline, it is really interesting because it does outline ways in which those safeguards are being implemented.
Okay, thank you. I know there's a lot to research there. We do need to wrap up. We're talking about a closing statement, if we could here. Dionne, if you could keep it to a minute, please.
Oh, wow. Okay, we've talked about a few things today. So I really appreciate this conversation. As I said earlier, I'm a trained social worker. That is an experience that I want to bring to City Hall. We have a lot of challenges facing us, from housing affordability, where we need to deliver on not just protecting our neighborhood centers, but expanding them, from making sure that we support our small businesses through passing a B&O tax and providing tax breaks to those businesses. We have more opportunities to take programs like Seattle Restored and continue to reform and iterate them so they deliver for businesses and working people. I'm excited to bring that experience to council, and I look forward to serving the people of Seattle.
Okay, thank you. A minute, if you could, to wrap up, please.
What Seattle needs right now is a proven, experienced fighter who can continue to build on the progress that we have made, but also be ready to respond to the threats that were coming from the federal government. And I have shown myself willing and able to take on tough fights of the status quo to push for workforce housing, expand on-demand treatment, and that is the kind of fighter we need going forward. My opponent has soundbite promises, but I still have not heard enough concrete plans that will be done differently than what we're already trying to do. Storefront repair, Seattle Restored, those are programs that I support that help start, and we need to see that going, but we also have to make sure that we are not dropping the ball on what we've already done and that we are prepared to deal with this, with what Trump may bring down, because now is not the time for a learning curve.
Okay, thank you both very much for this, and we will be right back. What are people saying online about the race for Seattle City Council Position 9? One person writes, excited for some refreshing new leadership with Dionne Foster. Let's advocate for renters, workers, social safety nets, and transit. Another says, we need more council members like Sara Nelson to get Seattle back on track and back to being an amazing and safe city again. We'd like to know what you think. Send us an email at contact@seattlechannel.org or find us on social media. Good to have that commentary. Dionne Foster, Council President Nelson, thank you for being here. We will see you next time on City Inside Out.